Hi, Modern Royalty Podcast Tribe. Welcome to another episode of Tea Time, a Modern Royalty mini podcast where we dive into the lives of stories of those who exemplify modern royalty through their passions, professions, and their impact on the world. I'm your host, Princess Sarah Culberson, and this week I'm honored to welcome the billionaire, yes, I said billionaire, Dr. Trisha Bailey.
So they say, you can't do it because they can't do it.
She's written the book. You can really learn more about her story in the book Unbroken and her new children's book that's coming out soon, Still Unbroken.
After the donation, I met Tori 2 days after that. And then I got the love of my life.
All right, now everyone listening will be like, okay, so I'm going to donate and where's my man? Wait a second. I am so excited to interview you because not only are you a queen who I admire and love, but you're a friend. And I want to start when we first met because I just want to say this to you, and this is totally coming from authenticity from me, because sometimes when women meet each other, there's like oh, who are you? And there's like this competition thing that can happen. So I just want people to know this about Dr. Trisha Bailey before we just jump in, because we fly in, we land at your beautiful equestrian horse stables. It's absolutely stunning for a surprise birthday for you that your incredible boyfriend, Tori, set up for you. And I walk in, I'm half asleep. I just got off the airplane and you come up and give me the biggest hug. Your whole spirit emulates love. I've never met you before in my life, and you are just met me with sisterhood, friendship, love, everything in that one moment. And I just want to say, what would our world look like if we all did that to each other? I just had to start with that because I'll never forget the moment meeting you and the impact you had on me just by being your loving, generous self. So I just want to say thank you for who you are and how you show up for people and how you showed up for me without even knowing me. First and foremost.
And you do know that you do the same, right?
I hope so. I hope so. But you brought a whole nother level, I feel like, but thank you.
Yes, your kindred, our kindred spirits of sisterhood and love and kindness and generosity that spreads across the globe. I pray that everyone one day it'll be such a great world to live in.
Yeah, just for us to give each other. And then we got to eat and I got to meet your family and your friends that you've known forever who are so beautiful. It's all about the tribe, right? Who you surround yourself with.
It really is.
I love. I love that. So I want to jump into the whole thing, your story, which is profound, what you have accomplished, where you've started with humble beginnings and to where you are now. And but I want to go back to Jamaica, which is where you're from. The beautiful, I love your whole body just shifted. You're like, yes, Jamaica. And I want to see if you could share a little bit. I know you grew up with your grandmother with no running water and no electricity. Can you share a little bit about your childhood?
Yes, my childhood was so happy.
Yes.
We had pretty much no resources. We farmed and we had no running water, no electricity. We walked 3.5 miles to school. I would argue it's 5, but my uncle said because my legs were short, it felt like 5. So I say 3.5. So he says it's 3.5. So I'm like, I'm still not convinced. When I go back next time, I'm actually going to measure it just to make sure that he's right, because I feel like it's 5. So my grandmother raised us to be kind. And she was always so kind to every person, like the community, the children, everyone would show up. Everyone shows up to eat at dinner time. And most of the time she didn't have any food left for herself. So she drank the broth from the food that she boiled for our dinner. And that was her meal most of the time. So I watched her being just this amazing human being. And my kindness definitely comes from her. And recently my uncle, my 72-year-old uncle, told me that I am the most perfect example of what she would have admired. And that was the best compliment and anyone who has ever given to me. So
Yes. She sounds like she was an amazing human.
yeah, she was
Amazing
as a
woman.
human. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And then growing up, and then you moved to Connecticut as a young teenager, 14, is that correct? When you were in
13,
Connecticut?
13,
13.
13.
13 when you moved. And I just have to ask you, when I tell people I grew up in West Virginia, which I love West Virginia, it's such a special place to me, people are always like, what? West Virginia? Are there any people of color there? And I'm wondering for you from Jamaica, to go from Jamaica to Connecticut, what was that like?
Oh my God, that was a different world, a completely different world because one, they tell us
Shift.
in Jamaica that when you go to America, the roads are paved with gold. Well,
Right.
they're not.
Right. Yeah.
So Hartford actually has a very large Jamaican population. So
Gotcha.
my high school had one white child. She was a transfer student.
What?
Yes.
So it was like you were wow, that person.
I was pretty much back in Jamaica in my high school. It was the Jamaicans and the Black Americans, and that was the composition of my high school.
Really? Oh, that's wonderful. I mean, it's wonderful to have diversity, but also it wasn't such a shock for you. You weren't just like, oh my gosh, where am I? And what had you all come to Connecticut? Why Connecticut?
So my mom, husband, family lived in Connecticut, and my aunt lived in New York. So when my mom migrated to America, she came to New York. And then when she married him, they moved to Hartford, Connecticut. When I came here in 8th grade, my high school was all Black, but then there's the other side of Hartford that's all Spanish. And so I went to all Spanish school. And it was interesting because the second day I thought I didn't know I didn't understand English because I never heard Spanish before.
Oh my gosh. So everyone was speaking Spanish. You're like, wait, what's going on? Is this a different kind of English?
I was like,
what's happening?
My God, I don't understand English.
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and also you were a huge athlete running track. You were in the Junior Olympics. What events did you run again?
So I ran, my main events were 400 and my main event was 800 and I also ran the 400. But in high school, I ran from 300 hurdles, 400, 800, 1600, 3200, cross country. I did it all.
Okay. So I was a sprinter too. Well, you did a little bit.
Middle
think you were middle distance because I did 100, 200. One time I ran the 400, I thought I was going to pass out. Like, that is a skill because it's like how you sprint it. You can't full out. I mean, I don't know. I was like, Coach, please don't ever make me do that again. I was so bad at that. Oh my gosh.
It is definitely the 400 the 800 is twice at the same speed, almost at the same speed. So
I can't. I don't even know. I remember this young woman in high school, Darnella Coleman. She was so incredible. And she beat me. I had the top time and then she beat me. And I'll never forget that. Do you have somebody that you remember back in those days or were you just always winning?
No, I do actually. So when I started running track, I was in Maxine Clark. So
okay.
Maxine, yes. And so Maxine was the fastest girl in the state, in New England and the nation. And the coach decided to team me with her. So my first year running was 10th grade and I did everything to try to beat Maxine. At the end, she pulls away from me and I beat her one time. Now, a few years ago, we were talking and she said, well, she got drunk the night before. So
she had that as an excuse.
I said, I don't care. I still beat you. Not one time, but I still beat you.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Oh my gosh. And then from there, then you go on to college.
Yes.
And you run track at UConn.
Full scholarship track, yes.
Full scholarship track. Now, one of the things that I've learned about you is that, and I so appreciate you for sharing this. You talked about getting ready to go to college and that you didn't have the top SAT scores. But UConn saw something in you and they were like, we're going to work with you. And we're going to talk about where you are now, but I think that is so important for people to hear because I think there's such these thoughts that if you don't do really well on an SAT score or ACT or whatever standardized test you take, then you're not going to do well in life or something, or different universities won't want you. And I think I was a horrible test taker.
Yeah,
Horrible.
me too.
And I really don't think it dictates your future. Clearly, right?
Right. I think I am a perfect example. I am a
Yes, you are an
perfect example
example of that.
So the world tells you that if you don't perform well on the standardized test, that you're not good enough. You'll never make it. And that's the narrative. And I am an example that is not true because there's so many other areas of being an intellect, a true intellect outside of standardized tests. And they're not set up for young women or men who look like us because coming from Jamaica, I didn't know anything about standardized tests. That's not a standard thing that we do there. And so I wasn't prepared. And the schools that I were in, they tried to prepare you, but I wasn't prepared for it. And that's why I went back to UConn because they looked at me and said, you know what? There's something special about her. I see a light that she probably doesn't see herself because I didn't see it myself. And that's why I went back and did the donation that I did because I wanted to say thank you for giving me my first chance.
Right. And also showing that we do give back to organizations and our universities and our communities that have served us. And
Yeah.
you gave one of the biggest donations or the biggest donation that the university's ever had.
Yes.
Which is,
yeah.
And so they were like, gosh, I'm so glad we took a chance on this amazing young woman from Jamaica, right?
And you know, my purpose, one of the other greater purpose in conjunction why I chose UConn is because I wanted them to be able to have the same narrative for another Black girl that's maybe she wasn't perfect. Maybe she needs a little tiny bit of grace that you will give to the white boy or white girl, that they will give it to her because they say, well, you know what? Maybe she'll become the next Trisha Bailey. And when we start changing that narrative, the world starts changing and how we're treated and received begins to change as well. Doors will open that should be open that otherwise would not have.
Yes, so true. You know, inside of that, what you just shared, what are the things that you brought from Jamaica to the United States with you? Words of wisdom. I mean, what you just shared, I feel like your grandmother, I mean, that's who you are, but your grandmother was just channeled through you in that moment. And I'm just wondering, are there certain things that you brought with you that you learned or that lifted you or grounded you that you brought when you came to the US?
Yes.
And to college?
Discipline. Don't quit on anything.
You said, I read, you said, I don't quit. You said, you finish everything. Is that what
I
you
finish
said?
everything. I finish everything and I finish it fast. I do everything that I can with whatever I'm doing and not crossing that finish line for me. It's like, for me, that's the ultimate failure. So everything I do, and that comes from Jamaica, having to walk as a 5-year-old, 3.5 miles to school is like you're overcoming this. Every rocks that I step on, every rocks that I step over or go around, it's like you're overcoming obstacles. So I was practicing those skills as a young girl that I didn't know that I would end up needing them in my adult life and in my teenage life. So it gave me an opportunity to just overcome obstacles. And I think that's a lot of people do not have that capability, and they can have it because that's something that you have to build. And when you're in that storm, knowing that your storm will run out of rain is such an important thing to remember, because when you're going through all these challenges that life throws at you, knowing that at the end of it, you're going to be okay.
I love that you said your storm is going to run out of rain. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I love that. Can you say more about that? I just love that your storm is going to run out of rain. I have another quote that I got that I'm going to share with you from you as well. But can you share about that one?
So with your storm running out of rain, it's like having the tenacity and the mental fortitude to be able to overcome whatever is being thrown at you. Knowing that there's always another option. So if someone tell you no, hence my creating my own yes. Someone tell you no, there's always a yes. You can always get a yes, whether you created that own yes for yourself or not. You can always get a yes, because a lot of people are going to say no because they're looking through their own vision. So they say you can't do it because they can't do it. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it, because when you decide to jump over that hurdle or push the hurdle over, you're going to get to that finish line where that person may have stopped and says, well, you know what? It's someone told me no and I can't do it. So I'm just going to stop now. That doesn't work in my universe.
And you know what? You can't test that on an SAT.
No.
You can't test that kind of tenacity and drive on an SAT, which some people get so many no's and they crumble, and that okay, that's them. But you keep going. And that shows why you are where you are, and it shows who you are and where you came from. Those walks, I'll go with you instead of your uncle. 5 miles to school. Those walks, he might get mad at me, but those 5-mile walks, I mean, got you ready for so many things in life. It's amazing how our younger years prepare us for our future, even those tough times and overwhelming and challenging times.
Yeah.
So not only did it get you ready cardiovascularly to do so well in all those runs, but yeah.
It's a life race. The life race is like, it's as long as you continue, persevere, and for me, is as long as you continue doing the right things in the world, whatever you put in the universe, it comes back to you, and God will continue to uphold you and hold you up when you can't hold yourself.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. So you have this quote that I got from one of your interviews. Even though I know you, I have to do research, and we're going to talk about your amazing book that I have right here, Unbroken, which is such a brilliant title that I feel like everyone can connect with in a way, in such a beautiful way. But one of the things you talked about, and I love this quote that you said, is once you release pain, you can replace it with love.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And you said that in one of your interviews. And I know that in your book, you shared about abuse from your stepfather. And then, I mean, your resilience is extraordinary. And I think it's so important that you wrote this book and that you shared your truth, because I think people think, oh, she's a billionaire. Oh, what, she grew up with a trust fund, or her life was like this, or oh, her life must have been so easy. Oh, I know people like that.
Yeah.
But people make assumptions, and they don't even know your story or your journey or people's stories and journeys to get to where they've gotten. So thank you for your vulnerability to write this book that everyone needs to check out, Unbroken. Buy this book because it's so powerful. I have not finished the book, I'm going to be honest, but I do know a lot of parts about it. And I just was wondering, you shared about dealing with abuse with your stepfather, and then also from an ex-husband.
Yes.
And also, if I understand correctly, he beat you so badly that you were in a coma. So
the coma, no, it wasn't because of my ex-husband. My ex-husband came after the coma. My ex was most recent.
I'm listening.
So when I was in the coma, when I went in the coma, I actually tried to commit suicide.
I did know that, but I didn't know that was because of the coma.
Yeah. So the narrative around, so it's still unclear. So that's why in the book it's kind of unclear whether I attempted suicide. I knew before I went in the coma, that was my thoughts, but I don't have any memory of what happened afterwards. So, but the injuries I had after coming out of the coma were not consistent with trying to commit suicide. So I don't know if it was a person I was with, if it was someone else, or what the circumstances
You're not quite sure what happened
that surrounds it. Yeah. And because I would never say it's the guy that I was with without knowing that for sure, because you do not place that burden and that pain on someone without knowing that for sure. It's just unknown. But I know my thoughts prior to waking up, that the last thoughts I remember is when I wanted to not live anymore.
And why was that? What was going on in your life to have you not want to live anymore?
So my grandmother had recently passed away. And the burden.
Take your time.
Why are you doing this to me?
I'm sorry. You know what, people? Listen, I'm going to let you take a moment, and I'm just going to say, the reason I'm asking is because so many people go through suicidal thoughts, wanting to commit suicide. And I think people, and if we look at your life, which we'll talk about, with being a billionaire, with the companies that you own, with owning portions of 3 different NBA basketball teams. I mean, your bio is unbelievable. And I think it's so important for people to understand that you went through a lot and did work on yourself to get to where you are. And I want people who might be having a very hard time right now, who might be listening, to know it's possible to move through abuse and trauma. It's possible to have suicidal thoughts, which I had when I was in my early 20s, when I wasn't doing well in my life. And I'm just wondering what was going on for you to have you feel that way.
So my grandmother had passed, and there was a void because she was my world.
Yeah.
My everything. As I was going through, and I've never cried in an interview before. And I'm so trying not to cry.
I cry all the time. This is a safe space. It's you and me. I know, and it isn't even out yet. But that's also the realness of who you are and the realness of the situation. Grandmothers are everything.
Yeah. And so my grandmother lived with me. And so I was grinding. I was working. I had my daughter at the time, and I was helping raise my brother. And so she took care of the house. So I joke with my sister all the time how she's a wife and I was a husband because I went out and I pay all the bills, and grandma just took care of everything. And she was my whole universe. She was my everything. And she passed away. I transitioned to California right after she did. And I experienced the circumstances with the company that promoted me to California, where I got there. I was hired based on my accolades. I was number one in the company at the time. I was finishing my doctorate, had my MBA and all those other licenses and degrees and so forth. And so they hired me they hired me for promotion without a formal interview, which is what they usually do. And once that happened, I got to California, and I sat there at lunch with my boss, and he looked at me and says, "Oh, I didn't know you were Black." And at the time I thought nothing of it. And I thought nothing of it at all. And I just continue on doing, because I know what I'm doing, and they hired me. And
So I just got to ask, I'm pausing for a second. So he saw all the accolades, all your accomplishments at this time, and he didn't think it's possible that this could be a Black woman who accomplished this.
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had won every award the company had ever given out for their cardiopulmonary specialists. So when he said that to me, I just shook it off like it's nothing, because of course, look at my resume and look at all the things I've accomplished. And when I got back home, they had to approve all, like, where you had to live and so forth and so on. My territory was Orange County, and Orange County, as you know, is very, very expensive. So what they pay me, I couldn't live in Orange County with that salary. So I lived in Riverside County. And so he started disapproving everything. And I transitioned to start my own business at that time. But starting your own business, it's not an easy road, especially when you don't have a safety net and you don't have no one to rely on. And it became, the pressure of life just became unbearable and overwhelming. And so I started having those thoughts that, you know what, I don't need to be here. I could just be with my grandma.
Because you're working so hard, you've accomplished also so much, and people are still not supporting you based on the way you look, your identity.
Yeah.
I think that's so important for people to hear, because I speak a lot in corporate America, and I speak with corporations, and some people don't know our implicit bias that we have, that we put on people before they even walk in the door. We've already made a decision about them.
Yeah.
And the impact that has on people, and the impact that had on you to, like, okay, I'm going to go do my own thing. But because I don't even feel comfortable, I feel like I don't belong. Probably you felt, I don't feel safe in this space. And and then you got to figure out how to do it.
I knew I belonged.
Your own.
I knew that he was being unfair. But I didn't know how to overcome the unfairness. I didn't know how to navigate it and go around it.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I was stuck, and I'm never stuck. And so I decided to start my own business at the time. And starting your own business without a safety net, it's a challenge. It's a pressure on you that when you're an entrepreneur, it's this level of pressure that it's not felt. That's why it's not many people who are successful in the entrepreneur world, because there's a certain level of pressure, especially the Black woman, whom challenges seem to come in every single direction, shape, or form, and created just specifically for you. It takes so much. It takes so much tenacity and so much mental fortitude in order to move beyond those obstacles to become successful.
And you've done that. How have you done that?
God.
Yeah.
God. You know, when I hit those walls, and I, even here in the space I am in now, I feel some days I feel like I'm on top of the mountain and all the guns are pointed at me and some are shooting. And so but God balances it out. So when one comes to get me, he sends someone else to defend me. And it's God and I get on my knees and I pray and I pray and I pray some more. And he always shows up for me in every circumstances. So yes, it's God. It's my will that he's given me, but it's God who sustained me to be here.
Yes. In another interview, thank you for sharing that. In one of your other interviews, you talked about someone called in and they said that they're dealing with trauma themselves. And you said that you did EMDR?
EMDR.
Can you share a little bit about that? Because I think that's so important for people to hear about it. And it could actually shift other people's trauma that they've been through that could be very helpful. And a friend of mine told me about it, and it made a huge impact in her life. So could you share a bit about it?
It has made the most incredible impact in my life. So I was going through the divorce at the time, and I realized that I literally picked the same man, just with different names. And it abused one direction or the other, whether it's financial, mental, physical abuse.
And it probably started with your stepfather, right? And then you choose.
It definitely started with my stepfather. And so when you experience trauma, such gruesome trauma as a child, and most of us have experienced some level of trauma as either children, young adult, or in your adult life, it shapes your brain. And what EMDR does is it reprograms your brain. So the therapist, the way she explained EMDR to me, she said, traumas are like ice cubes in your subconscious. They never melt. So what they do, they make all the decisions for you. But you don't know that's what's making you think that you're just smart and all these things, that you're the one making these decisions, but it's really your trauma because you haven't dealt with them. So you're really stuck in the dark. Like you're in a room, and when you have those trauma that you have not treated yet, you're just going with the little tiny light from the flashlight that shows you that. But after you have dealt with them and melt those ice cubes, like a normal memory, you don't remember it. Really, if you're walking down the street last year, you're not going to remember that. But trauma, you remember all of those things and they stay there. When you melt those ice cubes, they become like normal memories. So that's why I'm able to talk about the traumas without having a major emotional break. And I'm able to release it so that I'm able to replace those things with love. And while I was going through the divorce, I said, something have to give. Yes. What are you doing? And I've always been so successful in my professional world and my professional life, but my personal life sucked. So I'm like, something have to give. They have to be a better man, or they have to be a better person. But I didn't know that I was the one doing it to myself, because I'm running what I thought I was running from, I was running to. And once I so during the divorce, I said, you know what? I'm writing the book. My talk therapist says, you know what? I think EMDR is the best option for you. I started the EMDR therapy, and I was doing talk therapy. And the three combination of that, I got the opportunity to melt my ice cubes. And because of that, now I'm at the happiest place with a man in my life. Thank you, Jesus.
He's pretty special. We love him. We love Tori. He's so special. But what I also hear is so powerful is that you wouldn't have that if you hadn't done the work. It really, you took the time, you did the work, and really took that on. How long did it take with the EMDR to really notice shifts? Is that like a year? Is it 2 years? Is it 5 months? I have no idea. Is it ongoing? I don't know how that works.
As many traumas are in my book. I know you haven't finished reading them yet, but there's a lot. I did 8 sessions.
8 8 sessions. And how long? Like an hour session?
So 1 hour session. And I did 8.
I'm sorry. I have to say 8 hours to get rid of what you've been through. That's unbelievable. I would think that would take like 8 years.
Now it's painful because you're reliving those memories. And then you start remembering things that you didn't even know that happened. Or you start, for example, the only reason why I know that the thoughts of suicide was because of my grandmother was because of EMDR, because during that process of going through that trauma, I discovered that, and those memories start coming back to you.
So you start figuring out why you do what you do.
And then my sister, I never knew, my sister and I have had a relationship like this. Now we're like this. But I realized through EMDR that she was my safe space. But I never knew that. And it's painful going back through the memories. And most people don't want to, because you're like, I'm functioning, I'm good, I don't need to relive this horror. But in order to have the truly happy space for yourself now and in the future, and especially if you have children, you don't want to pass those trauma down to your kids. You want to make sure that you heal yourself so that they can have a really good life without having those pain that you've ever had.
Right. You gave it to yourself, so then you can give it to others.
Yes.
Wow. So, and moving through that, now where you are, dun 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 dun. I mean, my goodness. I have a list here of all of your businesses and so on that I just I so admire you and all that you've accomplished. But can you tell us a little bit about your real estate business? So we'll start there.
So I've always known from my financial literacy that you can only build true wealth if you have real estate. True wealth you could be rich, but you won't be wealthy without real estate. And so my real estate business is actually the largest portion of my portfolio. Matter of fact, yesterday, Tori and I closed on our first 45-acre property together.
I love that. I didn't know. That's so wonderful. Congratulations. Where is it?
It's a secret. Because of when this is going to air, because he hasn't told his family where yet. So,
okay.
So I can't announce it. I can't announce it yet. But I've never bought anything with a man before, and he's never bought anything with a woman. So it was like a really special moment for us. I also bought a building while I was doing my hair yesterday. So I love real estate. This is.
I want to be like you when I grow up. I just bought a building while I was getting my hair done.
So the real estate started. I knew that I've always had real estate. So even before I owned the company, I've always flipped homes, and I've always buy and sell and so forth.
Can I go back? Where did the money come from to start getting real estate? Because people might go, I want to get real estate, but I don't have the funds to do it. Because weren't you the first only Black woman in New England to be a broker? Is that?
Yes, a stockbroker. Yes.
A stockbroker.
Mm-hmm.
And is that where all this money started, like in the stockbroker
Yes.
world?
Yes.
Okay.
So when I was hired, I graduated when I was 20, and I decided that, you know what, they're paying for this scholarship. I'm getting the hell out of Dodge. Right at when I was supposed to. So I graduated when I was 20, and they hired me at the largest brokerage firm, which was Solomon Smith Barr, now Dean Witter. And I was the first Black woman in New England to work for, it's first and the only to work for the company. And what I did was, my base salary was $30,000. I lived off of $30,000.
Wow.
I had an apartment. It was 2 bedrooms. I rented 1 bedroom for $400, and my rent was $200. So I lived just on the $30,000. My first year, I think I made over 300 something thousand, but everything went into my investments and my savings. And so I've always, because the financial discipline must be there. Even when I was in college, when I was working while running track and in school, and my check was $120, I still save $50 every paycheck, because in order for you to be financially successful, you must be disciplined with money. So as I continued on my journey, I went to the pharmaceutical industry. They were paying for my degrees. So they paid for my MBA as well as my doctorate. And not advising people to do this now, but this is what I did.
Okay. Okay.
Because my education was free, I took my student loans and I used it to flip houses. And so,
Really?
yes. And so, and then during the market where it was just booming, I'll put a deposit down for a new home, $85,000. And by the time that the house was done built, which was about 6 months later, 8 months later, the house was worth 300,000. So I would
Sell it
close on the house today and I'll sell it tomorrow.
and make that money and then
I-
save some and put the rest toward another property.
Yes. And continue on. So I had, at the time I'm working, but I had 3, 4 properties at least at the same time. And I made my last purchase in that venture, January 2005, because the market went down 5%. And that was the first time in about 7 years that the market went down. And I knew that that was going to make a turn, and I dodged the bubble, the burst.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So
This is great, especially for people listening. So your advice is to save. What are some other advice tips that you have for people?
I always say, make sure no matter how young you are, your first home, because one, if you have a job and you contribute in your 401k, contribute as much as you can to it, because you see minimal changes in your paycheck if you do 10% or 15% because it's before tax dollars. So you'll see very slight changes. And it's the only place that you can actually take money from your 401k to put a deposit on the first time on the first time home buyers on the first home. And you don't get penalized by the IRS for that. Well, otherwise, you take money from your 401k, you're going to get penalized if you're not at retirement age. So that I tell young people, make sure your first home is essential, because you're building, you're paying yourself, your equity is going to continue growing. Later on, you might want a bigger house, or you want to do a business. You can take a line of credit, or you take some equity from it to start the different things that you want to start. So it's so important for you to be able to do that and learn how to fix your credit yourself, because then you'll know how the rules behind that. You'll know how to continue to stay afloat and not having to pay someone for everything that you need.
I love that. This is great. Can you tell us also about your philanthropic work? I know you do wonderful philanthropic work as well.
I do. That's part, that's my grandma that been ingested in my heart. I believe that in order to receive, you must give.
Yeah.
And the more you give, the more you receive. So I'm going to tell you a good story, and I haven't shared that. I don't think I've shared this publicly. After my donation to UConn, which was the largest donation I've ever done, the largest they've received, the largest I've ever done.
Yes, many millions.
Many millions. I was struggling with men, and I'm like, you know what? I give up. I'm just going to enjoy my life, retire my girlfriends, sip wine on the beach, and I'm good. My girlfriends are good. I'm good. And after the donation, I met Tori 2 days after that. And I feel like he was the gift, my largest gift. And then I got the love of my life.
Oh my gosh. That is so beautiful. All right. Now everyone listening will be like, okay, so I'm going to donate, and where's my man? Wait a second. I bet we called you. Wait a second. It's been 2 days. Is he coming in 3 days? What do you think?
He hasn't slid in my DMs yet. Where is he? Where is he?
I love that.
So
that makes so much sense. When you're giving and you're being generous, generosity comes to you.
it does. It really does. And I believe in helping and caring for the world. Caring for the world and care for the people, especially the ones who look like me. Not just the ones who look like me, but my focus is single moms, single Black and brown moms and girls. And for me, the way that I think of money, I'm actually very conservative with money. Very,
Probably
very
why you have a lot of it. Because you keep it. Yeah.
And I always say, when someone's trying to overcharge me, I said, you know, I can give a scholarship, but you charging me this? You know how many scholarships I could give out without wasting it on this? And that's where my mind is always on helping others. And so, like, in the pandemic, I served over 4.5 million meals to different people. I have a scholarship program that more than 500 kids have gone to college on. I'm excited, and I love being in this space to be able to help and touch people who needs it the most. because, you know, just like UConn gave me a chance, I would like to be that person who give many people across the globe chances, the people who deserve it. You know, there's some people who just don't deserve it. And you find ways to make sure that you weed those people out. But there's so many people in the world who really deserve a second chance. And that helps, sometimes just a simple helping hand.
So true. I love that you're doing it. And I think it's so, like you've said in interviews and things that I've read about you, and also knowing you as a friend, when we go through things, they're often preparing us. They don't happen for no reason. They happen for a reason. And your experiences have led you to, oh, I got into UConn and my SATs, I might have had a hard time, but other people might as well, but they still can do great things. So you see the greatness in people and you're supporting them, which is like, this is what we all aspire to do and should be doing in whatever degree we can do, whether it's helping somebody in our neighborhood or down the street or whatever that is. I think that's so important.
It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could just simply be an advice. It could simply be information. What I've noticed, a lot of people, they have a hard time helping with information. They won't give it. And I'm like, if you give it, you will get so much more back. I was listening to the owner of Publix, the founder of Publix, and they asked him, he's also a philanthropist, and the interviewer said, how much more money do you think you would have if you never gave anything away? And his answer was, I probably would have nothing if I didn't give anything away, because the more I've given, the more I receive. And that is so true for my world and my life. So I'm always encouraging. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be your time. It could be your advice. But as long as you enter the situation with a clean heart and clean spirit, then God is going to return that blessing. The universe will return that blessing back to you tenfold.
Completely. I love that. And I want to also talk about the NBA team, the NBA teams. And how did you get into that? Like, when did you say, okay, how many women and women of color are part owners in NBA teams? I don't know. Are there very many? Are there any other than you?
I'm not sure.
I know that there are women who are WNBA owners, but I don't know. I'm not sure either. Yeah. How did you get into that world?
So I'm going to tell you a story quickly. So when I started my company, the first year, I was on a date. It was a blind date. And the guy, I was watching the NBA and we're on the date and we're at a sports bar. And I looked up and I said, one day I'm going to own a professional sports team. And he's like, what? You could never do that. That's what he said to me. So when he did that, I turned my back to him and I didn't talk to him for the rest of the night.
You're like, I'm going to watch this game and then we're done.
Right. And then I was like, I wish I knew his name now because I would actually shout him out real quick.
You're like, I don't even remember. Put that out of my hat.
So I got involved with that. It's actually as an investment. So I have different various investment advisors, whether it's the tax investments or the various wealth management people. And one of them brought the MBA proposal to me, and they were selecting a few people who can actually invest in it. And I was one of them. So that's how I got involved in it. I'm not involved.
You put it out there and manifested it.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. And I tell Tori all the time, one of these days, we will be the majority owner of one of these NFL teams or NBA teams. So it's, I'm putting that out there.
I love it. Well, I'm planning on interviewing Tori too, because he's one of the owners in CAA and one of the first Black men to be an owner at CAA agency.
The only. Yeah, the only. Right. The first and the only.
The first and the only. So far. But he's mentoring lots of people to come behind him, to be next to him or move beyond. And that's the same mission that I have as well. Yeah. You found your kindred spirit, your equally yoked person.
Yes, I did. I found my equally yoked. I found my king.
Yes. I love that. I want to, before we close out here, do you have anything that you want to share, a nugget that you've learned on this journey? I mean, you've shared a lot already. Anything you want to leave with young people or adults for that matter, working on their journeys or their financial journeys? Is there anything you'd like to share?
Yeah. So I get this question a lot. When you're in the room and you're the only one, How come you're not intimidated because for whatever reason? When you're in the room and you are the only one, it is because you as a Black woman have worked 5 times harder than they have. And you are 5 times smarter than they are. Therefore, you can outthink them, out strategize them, because that is your room. You are the center of that room. That's why you are the only one there. So always remember that no matter where you are, no matter who surrounds you, that is your space to hone and allow them to see your excellence so strong that they cannot deny you.
Drop the mic. I love that so much. You've completely shifted a context where very often people walk into the room, whether a woman or however they identify, religion, whatever it is, and feel like, oh, I'm the only one, and maybe go into a dark place. But
Yeah.
what I heard you say is there's a different context of you can walk in the room and go, oh, yes, I am here. I'm supposed to be here. And I have the intelligence, intellect, power to be here. And this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Love that.
Because, they don't choose us Black women just because we are borderline. They only choose us because you are so excellent at what you do that you outshine everybody.
You have to. It's exhausting sometimes.
It is exhausting, but we're in America. So that's
I know. Show me how great you are. Show me how great you are. Are you enough? Are you? Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for showing us how wonderful and great you are and sharing intimate parts of your life with us and how you've gotten to where you are. I adore you. I love you. And I can't wait to see you soon.
So much. You.
I'm giving you a hug, my friend.
Oh my God.